Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Awake Illinois live stream. It is Tuesday, October 29th, and I'm going to be welcoming on our guest here today. We're going to have a fun conversation. We are, for the first time, I believe, going to be streaming to Rumble. So hopefully that's working, and this is kind of like a test run. So we've added Rumble to it, and we'll see if indeed it's live. I believe it is. So thanks for those of you who are joining us on Rumble. And we have, of course, Twitter, X, we have YouTube, we have Facebook and Instagram. So we have connected with an Illinois native by the name of Josh Seiter, and he is former Bachelorette contestant, and he has gone viral. So when I saw on social media that he has basically told everybody the truth, that this was all a social experiment, and he mentioned he was in Illinois, I said, well, we have to invite you on here. And so here he is to join us. Welcome, Josh, to the live stream.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so thank you. So you embarked on this whole experiment, what was it now, 5 months ago?
Yeah, it was about almost 6 months ago, yeah.
6 months ago. Okay, so you were on The Bachelorette, so you're no stranger to TV, to media. And so why don't you talk us through how you arrived to this point this year where you said, I am going to take this on and basically perform as a trans individual, and it just went viral on your social media. So what was it that you were seeing in our culture or in media that you were inspired to take on this role?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I've been seeing a shift in the culture for a long time. I was homeschooled along with my two brothers because my parents saw that shift in the early 90s. And my brothers were coming home with books like Why Timmy Has Two Dads and just books that weren't educational. There was nothing there for them. And my parents said, that's it, we're done, we're homeschooling you. And then, throughout college, I saw just kind of the rise of wokeness. I went to college in 2007 to 2012, and I was like, this is kind of getting out of control. And then more recently I was seeing the trans movement, and they were making statements like trans women are valid, they have shared journeys with women. And I was like, okay, this is patently false, this is ridiculous, and the fact that people are getting canceled for questioning it is not okay. These are men in dresses cosplaying as women. Why is everyone going along with this, especially the medical community? So I told my friends, hey, I want to take this on. And they said, well, you're going to get called a transphobic bigot if you do, and you'll get canceled. And I said, well, I could infiltrate it, become one of them, and then show the world what a joke it is from the inside out, playing within the rules that the medical community has established, playing fair, and I will show how ridiculous this entire thing is. And so that's kind of how the experiment was born and why I started it.
Okay, so I want people to see your Instagram. So Josh underscore Seiter underscore official. So we'll have all of this linked at the blog so people can see your videos. But you posted tons of videos, and I just want to play one or two right now for people who, even if they've already seen some of your stuff on social media, we just need for context to see how you played this part so brilliantly in character. So let's do this one of you in the yellow dress, like Belle in Beauty and the Beast.
Hey everyone. So I want to talk today about the elephant in the room that women don't like talking about, but we all think about: having a bulge. Having a bulge doesn't magically make you a man. Having a bulge doesn't negate your womanhood. A lot of us women still have our bits and pieces, and that's okay. So I think we really need to start changing the language and discourse around this issue and start normalizing it. Bye, everyone. Hey, everyone.
Okay, so first of all, who inspired your voice and your look? Did you come up with this yourself, or did you know somebody that you were kind of mimicking here? What's going on?
Yeah, so I really struggled with that part the first few weeks that I started posting, because I just kind of made the first post, with no preparation. And after like 5 or 6 posts, it started to kind of just come to me. I just made my voice higher pitched, tried to make it sound like, trans people, the way they talk, and just, Dylan Mulvaney, I guess I may have modeled some of my mannerisms after him.
Okay.
But kind of was just something I made up, and then the hi everyone, bye everyone, which has kind of become the, hallmark of that, just came to me one day, and I was like, this is kind of catchy. I think I'm going to keep using it.
Okay, so let's hear. I'm going to play another one here, Josh.
Hey everyone! So I wanted to give you a little update about why I changed my mind about bottom surgery. I thought long and hard about this, no pun intended, and I just don't think I want to do it. I've never been a wasteful person, even when it comes to things like food and money, and so I just don't think it's right to get rid of this. And I just want to say, this won't make me any less feminine or womanly. Our manhood does not negate our womanhood. So I just wanted to give you guys that little update. Bye, everyone. Hey.
Okay. That last sentence is classic.
Yeah, that I knew was going to be kind of something that people repeated. Our manhood does not negate our womanhood, but I think it really explicates how utterly ridiculous and hypocritical this entire movement is, that they have to do these kind of mental gymnastics and say these hypocritical things constantly for any of it to make sense to them. It doesn't make sense to the rest of us. But I used phrases and said things that they have all said before. The video about bulges is something that was said a million times by Dylan Mulvaney. But I'm glad that people can see how hypocritical it is and stupid. It doesn't make sense. They're trying to convince us that a man's manhood can exist simultaneously with him being a valid woman. It doesn't work.
Right. So what was the experience like? I mean, you have your nails done. Did you do them yourself?
Yeah, so I did the nails myself, and then the makeup and most of that was done by a close friend. And then the outfits I just got at a thrift store up the street.
Okay, so you did a lot of these in public. What was the observation? What could you tell how people were observing you, or did you interact much with people? Were people responding to you when you were making these videos publicly? I assume you stayed in character for the whole time.
Well, unlike most men that are cosplaying as women and call themselves trans women, I had scruples and morals. So I didn't want to be around kids. I really didn't want to be
interesting.
around people in general. I would never go into a women's restroom because I'm a man, like all the other trans women out there that are men. And so there's a lot of things I wouldn't do. But yeah, I'd go in public, all the videos, a lot of them, I think at least half of them are filmed in public, and there's people there. But if a group of kids was like nearby or something, I always had a heavy coat with a hood. And if I was in like a skirt or a dress, I would always throw the heavy coat on because I, think it's inappropriate for kids to see people dressed up like that. So yeah, there were certain things I would do.
Okay. So when you first started posting these videos, what were your first observations when people would comment? What did you see happening on your social media? What were those interactions like, or DMs or comments on the posts?
Yeah, so a lot of people are just surprised and shocked because I've been in the public eye for a while now. And so it was like, oh, wow, I didn't see this coming. But a lot of new followers were coming and my videos were getting tons of views. And there's kind of a split opinion. I'd say about half were saying, this is weird and not right and you're not a woman. And I was encouraged to see that there was sane people commenting on my page. And then there are others who are like, oh my God, I'm here for this. You go, girl. This is amazing. You're so beautiful and valid. We should go have a girls trip together, and just, ridiculous stuff. And so it was disappointing to see that about half of the people viewing my videos actually went along with it and thought that was okay.
So when I first saw this go viral, when you first started doing this, like over the summer, I honest to goodness thought that you were choosing earnestly to live as a woman. Like I thought that, and I thought, of course, in 2024, a former Bachelorette contestant is now wanting to be a woman. Like I was like, we're in 2024. Like this does not surprise me at all. And so it didn't really move my needle much because I was like, of course, this is where we are, right? And then I was actually surprised when I found out this was totally just you being in character and putting forth this social experiment. So you had been on The Bachelorette, and I'm curious, how much more attention did you get from women on social media once you started portraying yourself as a woman? Was it equal 50-50 men and women, or did you see a lot of this quote love bombing, this gushing from women? How did it compare to before when you were like Mr. Bachelorette contestant?
Yeah, so it was that's a great question. It was a little different this time than any previous time because I ended up getting 116 million plus views now on these videos dressed up as a woman just on Instagram alone. So just in general, I was being bombarded more than I ever had been in my life, both good and bad. When I came off The Bachelorette, there was definitely, I wasn't on there long, but there were that would inbox me and DM me and stuff like that. This time there was just more volume in general. The videos were getting millions and millions of hits. So I got way more DMs from women and just comments from women. I would say it was mostly all women that were giving me the positive flattery. There wasn't a lot of men that were like, oh yeah, this is awesome, which is not surprising to me. There were some
Mm-hmm.
where like I support you or I don't understand this, but I still support you. Nice messages, I guess, even though I think that they're enabling an evil thing. But most of it was women that were supporting me and saying, "Go girl, we should have a girls' trip," things like that. So.
That is fascinating. And I have observed this in other people who have taken this step to try and look like a woman, that they tend to get a lot of that love bombing and gushing from heterosexual women. So I just think it's interesting to observe who is actually embracing this ideology. A lot of it is actually ironically women. So there is this sort of mindset out there that you're challenging right now with this. And so you went on Tim Pool on his podcast twice this year, and both times you were in character still. You hadn't revealed that this was all an experiment. What was the reception from that audience? And, how, just what was the reception to that?
Yeah, so the audience actually, I went through and read the comments on the videos. The first time I was there, it was me, Alex Stein, and Tim Pool. And the comments were, I was always libertarian even when dressed up as a woman. So my political views that I expressed were still libertarian and I think middle of the road. And I think his audience, it resonated with them and they liked that. So most of the comments were all positive. Some of them were saying, why is he wearing lipstick? Why is he dressed up like a woman? I don't know what's going on here, but wow, he seems intelligent. So it was a pretty accepting crowd, I have to be honest, which is shocking because the left would have you think that anyone that's to the right of center is a raging bigot, but that was not the case.
Right. That's fascinating. And so you end up in character here, kind of talking about politics. I don't know how much of that was you or how much of that was your, your alter ego here, your character that you're playing. But you are obviously using your First Amendment right to free speech to shed light, some would say mock, make others aware, to call out this insanity, insert your viewpoint here. This is your First Amendment right, even if it is a joke or, an experiment. I'm curious how, the left, the reaction from, so you're saying the reaction from people who typically might watch like, Tim Pool, might lean more conservative. You mentioned sort of a libertarian bend when you were on the program, like live and let live. But it sounds like you're calling this out and saying like, no, we should not be complicit in a lie. So do you want to talk about how you feel with this type of movement, of, adults engaging in this? Where do you fall on this issue right now?
Yeah, well, it's really scary because you mentioned First Amendment, and I think that's so important. I think that's paramount. And what's scary is that you have lots of times Twitter, prior to Elon's takeover, when Jack Dorsey was owning it, Twitter and other large tech companies censoring people who would state the obvious, which is that is a man in drag, that is not a woman, and they would get censored for saying that, which it's true. It's men cosplaying as women. So not only is it looked down upon to criticize the trans movement, but lots of people are actually being censored and they're having community footnotes put under their statements saying this is false. It is not false to point out the fact that a trans woman is a man in drag. And so that's really scary that our First Amendment rights are getting taken away for speaking truth. It's really Orwellian. And
Mhm.
about this is like 1984 with double speak and them trying to tell you that up is down and down is up and a man is a woman, and the fact that even women are having their voices silenced, and they're not able to criticize men that are in their spaces is scary. And I think that's epitomized most with TERFs and J.K. Rowling.
Right.
People are trying to cancel them for speaking up and saying, hey, we're women. These are our spaces. We don't want men in them. And so I think the trans movement is a misogynistic movement. It's about male hegemony. It's about males living out a sexual fetish in autogynephilia. And I don't think a lot of it has to do with true trans people, whatever that is. If someone's suffering from gender dysphoria, they need treatment. That's important that they get that treatment. That does not magically make you a woman. And that should not magically take away our rights to state that and to state the fact that you're still a man with a mental illness. And so I do think that this movement threatens our First Amendment rights. And I think that it's important because women are being pushed out of safe spaces for women, whether it's sports, bathrooms, locker rooms.
Right.
The founder of Giggle made an app for women only, Sal Grover, and there were men infiltrating her app as women. And she said, hold up, this is an app specifically for women. Well, that trans-identified man sued her in Australia and won. And the court said, no, Sal, you have to let men onto your women-only app if they identify as women. That's what's at stake here, women's safety, our daughters' safety, and I think it's such an important issue, and we need to keep speaking up about it.
100%. And this is a very shocking analysis about the female athletes that lost almost 900 medals to trans-identifying men worldwide, according to this report. It's amazing how many people are struggling to make the leap between men and women's sports, but still wanting to, not be perceived as that bigot, right? And so there's so much fear. They see this. They see too how organizations have highlighted that males who identify as women can be assigned to a female prison, and rapes have gone up. It's just, we've reached this realm of such absurdity, but people still are afraid to be called bigots. So I'm like, your daughter's sports they've already been infiltrated. Their bathrooms have been infiltrated. The prison system's being infiltrated. Like, at what point are you going to be unafraid to be called a bigot? You're not afraid. You've done this for months.
Yeah, luckily I wasn't, but I understand why, because people are losing their jobs, they're losing their peer groups, and, they're being labeled a bigot for stating the obvious, which is that men in dresses don't magically become women. And it's also disgusting that women within the feminist movement, which you talked about earlier, are actually supporting and enabling these men that are invading women's spaces. They're liberal feminists, and they think that it's okay for men to invade women's spaces. And then you have the trans radical feminists who have come out and said, no, that's not okay. They're actually doing us a disservice and setting our movement back. Women fought so that we could have the right to be safe, and you're taking that away. And so I just think this liberal feminism it's cannibalistic, and it's destroying a lot of what the feminist movement has achieved up to this point. And women are being set back 60 years because you have men in woman face that are invading their spaces and taking their trophies and scholarships and everything else. And so I just really think it's reached kind of this inflection point where more and more people have to speak up, but they're scared because they're getting canceled.
That's a good point that you bring that up. This takes a lot of courage. Obviously you're public. You're still going to get a lot of heat. You're going to get a lot of hate. Any of the organizations such as Awake Illinois that have tried to empower people with the truth and to get what the mainstream media will not tell you about the harms of medicalization, particularly with children. And you see lawsuits across, the country now that are happening from children who have been irreparably harmed. My concern is very much for children, but you're right. All of this is downstream. So once we permitted it at this level, of course, it has come all the way down and into schools. So I'm going to show something that we exposed recently. But when you mention feminists, supposedly they're for women, why this almost fanatical cult-like devotion to the man and woman face and the gushing? In my opinion, you could say it's anti-woman, but is there an anti-male component to it? Where you mentioned the mental health issues, are they exploiting men with mental health issues by celebrating this?
Yeah, well, I think great question. I think the progressive movement in general, it always has to progress, right? And so it's going to get into these increasingly ridiculous points, and it just keeps going and going and going. And I think that's why a progressive movement like the feminist movement is now progressing so much that women are supporting mentally ill men that are coming into women's spaces. I don't know the answer to your question. I have struggled with, why would any woman be okay with this? I think it is a very strong pull to want to be part of the cult. I think the cult ideology is strong. I think that lots of people want a sense of belonging and community, and since it's been made evident that you will belong to a community with a purpose if you join this movement, I think that's very appealing to intellectually shallow people. And I think a lot of the women in the feminist movement, these liberal feminists, are falling for it. And so they, don't want to run afoul of the woke movement. And so they join it. Other than that, I can't think of a logical reason why anyone would support this. And I'm glad for all the TERFs out there that are standing up and saying, no, we're not okay with this. People like J.K. Rowling, people like Sal Grover, they really are doing the Lord's work and saying, hey, what we fought for is this, not allowing men to invade women's spaces. And they shouldn't get an excuse because they're mentally ill. In fact, that's even scarier when you think about your daughter using the restroom. If a trans person's in there, by definition, if they have gender dysphoria, it's categorized as a mental illness under the DSM-5. So she is now in the restroom with a mentally ill man who thinks he's a woman. That's weird, creepy, and scary, and nobody should be okay with it.
I appreciate your commentary on that, because I know people are trying to seek some logic where perhaps logic may not even apply, right? You just have to reject the insanity and stop apologizing. So I'm going to move us on to something that we recently had been brought to our attention from parents in Indian Prairie School District 204, where 2 days before this male teacher was going to start showing an appearance of being a woman, this bulletin, a notification was sent out to parents on Sunday that this is going to start on Wednesday morning. Library director has encounters with kindergartner grades through fifth grades. Parents were
Sorry,
shocked.
I have to turn?
Yeah.
There's something running in the background. Can I turn it off?
No problem. Yeah.
Sorry.
So I know that Josh is aware of this issue. He has watched that we have broadcast it. But it's at our website, and this was a very tricky thing for us to tackle because we know there's a lot of emotion and sensitivity around this. We have talked about how, there are individuals dealing with mental health struggles. I certainly don't want to exploit anyone's mental health struggle or journey. But once it comes into a publicly funded school and children are going to be exposed to this, in the talking points bulletin, they say, we're not going to talk about, gender identity. But yet when you have a man that children have known as a man now wanting to be called a woman and miss, that is automatically infusing this radical gender ideology and normalizing it to children. So I'm worried about the fact that this person is having a mental health struggle and is now showing children that it's normal. Now, I have heard various reactions from parents, and some of them I think are just in such a wave of shock that they want to be compassionate, and they say, well, should he not keep his job? Do mentally ill people or anyone with struggles, should they be shunned from society? Should they not be in their employment? On up to people who say, we wish that this person had taken their mental health struggle and made it a private thing away from children. It runs the gamut, and people have so many different views. You were homeschooled. Your parents saw some of this stuff coming in. What is your take on what's happening in schools across the country where this is being infused and normalized, whether you consider it a mental health crisis or something that's perfectly normal, when it is put in front of children? How do you view this now after you've done your social experiment?
Yeah, I think this is very simple. It should be treated like any other mental illness. We wouldn't allow an anorexic person to walk into class where they're teaching kids and say, "Hey kids, I'm 80 pounds. Look at my stomach. I think I'm fat. Do you think I need liposuction, kids? I have anorexia and I think I'm fat at 80 pounds." And then the kids have to say, "No, yeah, you should totally get liposuction. You are fat, teacher." No, because we don't ask kids to entertain people's mental delusions. We also wouldn't allow a schizophrenic teacher to come in and say, "Hey kids, I think the CIA is in my bushes and I think they followed me here and I think they tapped my phones. Do you agree?" And the kids go, "Oh yeah, the CIA is totally after you, Teacher Smith." We would never do that in a million years. This is no different. Why are we telling kids that when a man comes in and goes, "I think I'm a woman," that the kids are like, "Okay, she, her"? It would get laughed out of anywhere else if it were any other mental health issue. But for some reason, because it's a man living out his sexual fetish where he gets turned on at the thought of him being a woman, somehow it's allowed. It has the imprimatur of the state and it's countenanced by all these people. Of the three, schizophrenia, anorexia, and gender dysphoria, if any of those three should be left out of our schools and away from our kids, it's someone suffering from gender dysphoria, because there's sexual components to that too. If we don't allow it with anorexia and schizophrenia, why are we allowing someone with gender dysphoria and probably autogynephilia to do this? It's absolutely disgusting. So just treat it like any other mental illness. I'm sorry that you're dealing with this. I'm sorry you're having a mental health crisis that's led to gender confusion. You are absolutely not talking about it with the kids. That's
Right. Right. And this talking points that came out, it's telling staff to basically direct children towards the normalization of this. And I'm not saying that you should have teachers that are talking to kids and saying, "Hey, this teacher's crazy," and, ignore. Parents have to be the ones guiding these conversations. But the district went right to normalizing this. So to your point, where does it end with everyone's mental health crisis now being exploited? On the part of the person who is dealing with the crisis themselves, but also the children. And so it says, if somebody asks an inappropriate question that isn't respectful, and then redirecting questions, but the respect and acceptance. At Owen, we accept and respect everyone in our school community. You were talking earlier when we were offline how you saw this coming years ago, and a lot of people sounded the alarm on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which ironically enough is about conformity. You're conforming to the notion that now, in this case, a man can be a woman and children should accept that as truth. So why don't you talk a bit about how you think this has probably been, coming for a long time, and now it's in people's schools and backyards, and it's almost too late.
Yeah, 30 years ago, I remember my dad saying they claim that, they're just trying to make sure everyone's equal and that we're tolerant, but this tolerance is going to get to a point where they're starting to try to brainwash my kids. And, I was young, so I didn't really understand the scope of everything he was saying. He couldn't have been more spot on. Now that we're in 2024, that's exactly what's happening. Look, nobody cares if you have a sexual fetish or if you're struggling with gender dysphoria and you're in treatment for it. Don't make that mental health crisis my truth. Don't force me to play along with your delusions. Again, if it were a schizophrenic or an anorexic person, they would be dealing with these mental health issues in private. We would not be giving kids printouts about how to go along with Teacher Smith's schizophrenia that the CIA put a camera in his toilet. We wouldn't do it. So why are we doing it here? But yes, this has been building and building, and people called it out back in the 90s. They said, it's only going to be a matter of time before, you're not content just practicing these things in your own life. You're going to want to drag us into it. And they said, "Oh, no, we aren't. It's not about that." And that's exactly what they're doing now. They're having shows in schools. Parents are bringing kids to drag shows now. They're having drag story hour. It's all playing out exactly how we expected it to play out. And I think the reason is because they know this is a flimsy ideology. It won't work with thinking, sentient adults like you and me. We have common sense and we will refute it and call it out. And so they have to go after the kids or the movement's going to die. And that's why they are so desperate to get kids involved in this. And I think that's why you see this happening, because they want to get them at a very young age, because that's the only time you can brainwash somebody to believe something as ridiculous that a man can magically become a woman.
Absolutely. And it blurs the boundaries and it lowers the age of consent. And there are just so many harmful applications when it comes to children. We as adults can have these discussions and this debate, but it really should not be up to children to have to navigate somebody's personal mental health crisis. That is too much of a responsibility for these children.
Well, now and then magically it's metastasizing over to the schools. So now not only does the teacher have it, but now lots of kids are coming forward at 6 years old telling their parents that they think they're trans too. There was not one trans kid anywhere when we were growing up. It maybe
Right.
one or two genuinely suffering from a case of gender dysphoria, but they
Right.
are now coming out in droves, dozens of kids at schools at a very young age saying they think they're trans now. So it's literally like a virus, and it's infecting people,
It
it's
is.
spreading, and it's metastasizing, and it's just gonna get worse unless people keep speaking out about it like you and me.
It is. And Stop the Harm database, you can look at Illinois. We've shown how radical sexual education in public schools is normalizing this concept of transgenderism with children kindergarten up to 12. And Lurie Children's Hospital has received money from the Pritzker family from a foundation. Policy is very much entwined with this agenda, and elections matter. And in Illinois, the Democrat Party has been all in on this. So I have to speak to the policy. But this has definitely happened to children. 412 sex change patients. These are children. Hormone blockers, the money that has come through, Lurie Children's Hospital, Shriners. This has been happening, and these children are irreparably harmed. I've mentioned that children across the country are suing now for having their healthy breasts removed, for having puberty blockers that have disrupted their endocrine function for life. That when you see this normalized in a school environment or in social media to children, the harm and where they are walking to in this path is so destructive that really right now what we want parents to do is feel empowered and courageous to talk to their children about this from a young age. You cannot pretend like this isn't happening. And you have to be the barrier between your child and this total agenda that's taking over our schools, it's taking over mainstream media, and arguably every electronic device that your children are on right now.
And I think the only reason it's gotten here is precisely because we've been so passive. So that cannot be the way forward, because we are in this mess because we did not speak up sooner. So the time to speak up now. There is no brighter line, no more obvious case of why we need to speak up than the one you brought up about this teacher that's trying to drag these poor children into his mental health crisis. So the way of staying silent and trying to be tolerant, it's not working. It's like enabling a drug addict. And I know about this because I have one in my extended family. And you try to be nice to them, and you try to be accepting, and you try to be tolerant, and they get worse and worse and grow into a bigger and bigger monster. And you know what that makes us for being tolerant? We were nothing but enablers. And that's what we will be remembered for if we go along with this. We are not nice, we are not kind and compassionate for going along with these delusions. We are enablers. And like an addict, they are going to keep getting worse, and it is going to keep getting more and more out of control. And I get that message a lot. Josh, with your experiment, all you did was show that the left is kind and compassionate, or all you proved is that we're accepting people. There is no nobility or virtue in going along with and enabling someone's destructive mental illness. So I think we absolutely need to speak up, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because I mean, if you sit down and think about it, the teacher is literally asking kids to call him a woman. If you think of the damage that's doing to those little kids, it is reprehensible. And so I hope more and more people speak out about this. It's reached a point, we're almost at that point of no return, where if we don't do something now, nothing can be done about it.
Well, a lot of parents are pulling their children out of the school. They're homeschooling, they're sending their children to private, and we pay a lot in taxes. And this is just such a devastating reality to families. But they're realizing it late, but they're doing everything they can to try and not confuse their children. And I worry for this gentleman. I think he's being exploited by our culture right now. And it was interesting to look at the social media for this individual. When he had obvious photos of himself as a man, it was normal commentary and interaction on social media. But then the minute that last photo of him appearing as more like a woman with the makeup, all of these women started gushing and love bombing him and saying beautiful inside and out, heart gifs, emojis. And it's just so sad that a man had to basically become a mockery of women in order to get attention from women. And this is not the message we should send to growing children, that they are born into the wrong body and that this is normal. I wish this teacher well. But I know that, with compelled speech issues right now and just the concern for, the safety of children, I know there are a lot of pro bono law firms that are going to be at the ready if they have to litigate, because that's really all we have left right now, is to protect our children, remove them from these environments. But if the environment is toxic and breaking the law, we're going to have to sue. So I appreciate you commenting on that. And these resources we're going to have in the blog post. The PragerU video with Dr. Miriam Grossman, she is a psychologist, and she is sounding the alarm on how everything that went into pushing this agenda in Europe has been stopped. All of the data is a lie, and patients had poorer outcomes after they traversed this medicalization. Billboard Chris, he's been providing public testimony, so eloquent and poised. And then the book, Queering of the American Child, all of these resources, I hope that parents, if they're new to this especially, will empower themselves with the truth. And if people want to follow you, here are your Instagram and Twitter profiles. What's next for you, Josh? Are you just going to keep on this media circuit of representing truth and defending women and countering this agenda? What's next for you?
Yeah, so the whole reason I started this in the beginning was because, I wanted to get people talking about it. I was tired that no one was speaking up against this. And so I kind of wanted to start a commentary and a dialogue about this issue. And now that I want to embrace that dialogue. So I want to keep having conversations with people about this issue and other issues that are important to us and our kids and our families. And so I just want to keep debating people. I prefer to talk to people who have an opposing viewpoint to mine. I don't want to be stuck in an echo chamber like the left is. I want to debate people and turn them to the truth so that they can see what a danger this is. I have lots of friends in the LGB community, and they are tired of the tease too. And so it's not just me, it's not just conservatives or libertarians that are speaking up about this. It's people within that own community that also see the danger of it and see how pernicious it is. And so I just want to keep talking about it and keep having a conversation, because that's kind of gone by the wayside. And I think if Kamala gets elected, we're going to see even less of an open dialogue and room for debate of people with opposing viewpoints. So I just want to keep getting that rigorous debate and dialogue to continue. And if that means going on podcasts or shows, whatever it is, I'm happy to do it.
Well, thank you for stepping out and for doing this and for empowering other people to have courage. I think that's exactly right. Once people self-censor and silence themselves, cancel culture wins, insanity wins, the lies win. And so I think you're actually doing a lot to empower people. So people need to follow Josh Seiter on Twitter and on Instagram. And I know you're really busy, so thank you so much for joining us today. And it's been great to chat with you, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much, Josh. All right, so everybody share this with all of your networks. And for anybody who's going to want to promote your business or your brand or a cause, we are going to be taking sponsorships for upcoming live streams. So we're going to have some pretty cool and amazing voices continue empowering you and informing you. So stay tuned for sponsorship opportunities. But we appreciate you tuning in. Share this and let us know if you have any topics you want us to cover going into the remainder of the fall and into the winter here in Illinois. Thanks for joining us on the Awake Illinois live stream. Take care, everyone.
I really hope you enjoyed it. We had a ball making it. Thank you very much.